Hello, my dear students. Welcome to our class today. My name is Jen Wamadhu, and I'll be taking you through this very interesting unit, Introduction to Journalism. The unit code is CJL 2101. Welcome, and let's work together. So where we start is the introduction part, and where we are introducing journalism. What is journalism? One thing we need to realize that is journalism is a process. It's an activity of gathering, accessing, creating, and presenting news or information to the mass. Why we say it's a process or activity, it is because there are several steps that are undertaken so that we can get the final product, which is the content which is consumed by the mass, the people, the target audience. So you have to wake up in the morning as a journalist, because the people who practice journalism, as we will see, they are called journalists. You go to the field and look for this information from the sources. It can be either from the courts, it can also be from accident scenes, it can be from fire, it can also be in learning institutions. Once you gather this information, you don't just present everything you've gathered from the field to your target audience. No, why? Because these people at times, they'll give you a lot of information, and this information you're not able to disseminate all of it, because as you can see in a news broadcast, we have like only 30 minutes, which is called the news hole. And this news hole, the moment you start giving news, you have the hard news, you have the feature times, you'll have the weather, you have sports, and many other things. They are still advertisements. So within 30 minutes, you can be able to tell and give every information that you gathered from the field. So you need to sit down and put rationality. You compare which has more weight, which is more credible. And then once you're able to do that, then you edit. You remove or add anything that doesn't add, make sense, bring sense, you remove. Anything that is sensible, then you add. And then later you present news, what we call dissemination, where you pass this information from now the media house to your target audience, who are the consumers of your information. It is also the product of all these activities we've mentioned. So the key thing here when you're defining journalism, remember it's a process that involves you gather information, then you create this news, you edit, and then you present news to the mass. So what is the purpose of journalism? Everything we do in life has a purpose. And as you can see, there are scholars behind elements of journalism, Bill and Tom. And they say that the elements of journalism is not just defined by the technology we use. We have so many things, because remember, in this 21st century, everything that we do is guided and controlled by technology. It is not about the reporters we get. It's not about the journalists who will go to the field and access this news and then present to us. Journalism is more than that. Yet, it is important to have this technology, to have all these skills. Yes, it is important to have what it takes to be a journalist. But then, beyond that, there are some other things that will guide you, which is what we call the principles that are going to define news. What are the do's and some of the don'ts? We will see as we proceed. So, my dear students, what is news? News is a part of communication that keeps us informed on the changing events. Remember, we live within a society, and things keep on changing. What we were discussing yesterday is not what we'll be discussing today. And every time we think of news being part of communication, we can't be able to do without it. Like we will see as we proceed. Communication is very important. The same way with news, because news is something that will keep you updated. You will tend to know what is happening within the area where you are. You will know how you're supposed to dress, for instance. You will know the areas that you're supposed to go and the areas that you should not go. Then, the other thing is that news has been defined again by different experts, like we've seen. News is anything out of ordinary. For instance, news is anything that doesn't happen always. It is something bizarre, something that we are not even able to comprehend at times. We get asking ourselves questions. How did that person do that? What happened? What really happened? For instance, if today we had that a man bites a dog, that will be news. But when the dog bites man, it is not news. So news is something that is not an obvious thing that happens every day. Then it is an unusual picture of life. We've said news is not something that, an occurrence that happens every day. So it's something unusual, something that will astonish you and I even as we watch. And that is what attracts us. Then news is anything that people talk about. The more it excites, the greater its value. For instance, today we are discussing COVID-19. And it's like every day when we wake up, there's always something new about COVID-19. These are called the angles through which journalists will use to frame the story so that we can discuss. And that is why we keep saying in journalism, the people who will determine what we discuss every day, they're the content creators, the people who come up with news. And then news comprises of all current activities, which are general human interest, and the best news is that which interests most of the reader. So when we look at that, it simply says that news has some traits, the characteristics, what makes you to be who you are. The same way with news. This is what makes news to be termed as news. And one thing we've said is that it has currency, the timeliness, as we will see. We will proceed and see the traits. And it must have human interest. It is what people want to hear. And this question I'll ask somewhere, is it about what people want to hear, or is it what people need to hear? But anything of human interest is what people want to hear. Something that is the public domain. Right now we want to hear more about the governor, the Kirinyaga governor, which is ongoing. We also want to know how COVID is being treated. Could be, is there an injection? Could be. Is there any medication, any sort of medication that can be used? We also want to know, when can we go back to school? Will you be able to come back to school by September? That is the other question we're asking ourselves. So any news that is touching the main key things that we are discussing, then it becomes news. So now we know what news is. It is anything that is being heard for the first time, which contains or which has several traits or characteristics. A characteristic, like I've just said, is what makes you to be termed as you, to be referred as you and not somebody else. The same thing with news. So news has what we call the news values, which are the traits, the characteristics. So anything that has the following values will be determined as news. One is the proximity. Proximity is simply the nearness or the farness in terms of geographical location, the nearness or the farness in terms of geographical location. For instance, if we can still use our COVID-19 cases, the first time we got the first case in the world in China, it was back in December. We discussed about it, but not for long. Nothing changed in Kenya. Why? Because it was so far, even though it was news. But the first time we recorded some cases in Kenya, there was phobia. Every now and then, people never wanted even to travel. And then after a few cases emerged in Kenya, there was now lockdown. Now it is acting on us. So whatever happens near you has more weight, and we consider that as news compared to something that happens far away. Another example, if there was a blast somewhere in the US, we will get to know about it. We will talk about it. It will affect us, but not as much as if something happened, a blast happened in Kenya. What we will do, we'll just sympathize with them, and we put the faces of, wow, we are so sorry. But you see, at the end of the day, it is not affecting us directly, not unless you have a relative who is living there. But if it happened in Kenya, the effect will be massive, and it will be felt, and people will take precautions. Then the second news value is the timeliness. Timeliness, it is in terms of time. When, the when question, it answers the question when. When did it happen? Remember, we've said news is anything that is being heard for the first time, now. So there's that noun, the currency of news is what we call the timeliness. Then we have prominence. We have prominence. Prominence answers the question who. Who is the big person behind the story. Remember, we say big people, big fish, big institutions will always make news. Everything that we follow, it is not about the common person, not unless that common person has done something bizarre, as we will see. But every time that we are looking at prominence, it is about the big people within the society, the politicians. Like right now, Governor Waiguru's story is of prominence because she's a prominent person. She's a big person who makes news. Then the other one is conflict. Conflict is another very important news value that we need to look at every time as a newsmaker. In journalism, everything that has two sides, opposing sides. For instance, you have, like if we went to politics, every time in Kenya we have several politicians who are vying for one goal. And there's always that conflict between Team A and Team B, the Chama 1 and B. So every time that happens, then we say, Leo, this good news. You know, there's something that people are struggling. So these opposing sides will always create the element of newsness. And then we have the novelty or bizarre or oddity. These when things that happen around us, they don't happen like what I said when we started. When a man bites a dog, it doesn't happen, but the other way it happens. So that time, that story will hit headline, whether it was from a common person or a prominent person, because this one doesn't happen every day in our everyday life. And then we have the currency, which is now again the time in terms of nounness. Everything that we are disseminating to the mass, it must have the element of currency. It must be today it has happened. And that is why you will see even when we rate news, we don't use the past tense. We use the present continuous tense. Whether something happened in the morning, we will say the president has said. We will not say the president said. And then the other one is impact. Impact, it's about the effect. Every story that is disseminated by mass, it must affect people. For instance, due to COVID-19, business has been shut down. So what is the effect of that? Many people have lost their jobs. We have families who have issues, who have difficulties. We have people who are we've seen so many cases of domestic violence in the media. Why? Because of this restraining, you know. We have to be there, all of us, the same day, in the same house. We don't rhyme. So what happens? Due to COVID-19, okay, we've seen the cases, the many pregnancy cases with young school-going children. So this is the impact of COVID-19. Another example I would give, what's about the fuel prices? Every time they appreciate, what happens? Then you'll hear journalists reporting saying, from today onwards, customers will have to dig deeper into their pockets. Why? It is an effect, the impact of the rise of fuel. Okay? So now that we know about the traits in journalism, in news making, what we must look for us to term something as news, then we need to know the purpose of journalism within the society. What is their role? What do they do? You know? And as we will discuss, we will see journalism plays a very critical role within the society, because the measure of every society, and especially in a democratic society, every time we talk of democracy, the one thing that we use to measure the democracy of a country is the media consumption within that area and the freedom of media to disseminate information. So the purpose of journalism is to keep and provide citizens with information they need to make the best possible decisions about their life. Like, if we are not informed on COVID-19, much of what we are doing today, the social distancing, we couldn't be doing it. We could be going outside there, we greet people, we hug people, we dine with them, and then later the effects will be enormous. But today, because we have been informed, thanks be to media, media has done what we call the civic education. Now we have the information at hand. We know the do's and the don'ts. That is why you'll find, even as we travel, we really want to be careful. Even when we meet with our friends, even though it's been long after since the lockdown started up to date, even when we meet with our friends, we don't hug them anymore. Even when we meet with family, we don't even greet them anymore. So we have the information. We are well informed. And also, media will inform us on what is happening within the government. Remember, as we will see again, the roles of media, media is supposed to keep not only a well-informed and entertained citizenry, but also it needs to have well-educated people. So they will give us more about the government. What is the government of the day doing for us? What is it not doing? Who are the corrupt people within the society? Who is misusing the public offices? All these we get from media. So what are the elements of journalism? Again, we look at Bill and Tom, and they identify essential principles and practices of journalism, which we will be discussing. Remember, a principle is a rule. There are things that we have to adhere to for us to practice journalism. And one of the key things that we need to adhere to, it's the obligation of truth, telling the truth and nothing but the truth. In whatever you go, because remember, journalism is not a career that you can practice seated at the back of with your computer in your office. It is a legwork process where you have to get out of your comfort zone, go to the people, gather this information, because information comes from people, and then share the same information to the people. So when you go to the field, you are obliged to tell the truth to the mass, okay? That one is debatable. We'll look at it to what extent of truth. But remember, as a journalist, you can't tell a lie. You can't spread lies. Tell me the truth, because as scholars argue, we are rational people. We are critical thinkers. So when you give me the truth, I'll be able to sit down and weigh options and see it will have effect A, effect B. But media should not mislead people. So that is why it should always tell the truth. Then, its first loyalty is to the citizen. Remember, again, as we'll discuss as we proceed, media has a role, a social responsibility role. And even as you tell the truth, and even as you inform people, remember, you are the person who advocates for these people. So you should respect them. You should listen to them. Tell people the stories that are about them, okay? Respect if they gave you stories and they told you, please don't share my story, please keep confidentiality, so be it. You should always remain loyal to your citizen. And then the essence is a discipline of verification. Then practitioners who are now the journalists, they should always maintain independence from those they cover. What is independence? Like we say, Kenya is an independent country, which means we don't rely on other people to do things for us. The same way in journalism. Journalism should be free. Have freedom, okay, of expression. So that whatever we disseminate to the mass, it is not something that is constructed based on the other people. But this question is also debatable, because we see in journalism, we practice journalism, we see journalists outside there, they come up with stories, and at times we hear the story was killed, what we call spiking, okay? So why did they spike the story? At the end of the day, do you have the independence to tell stories like you gathered them? That is a question that we need to answer. Then on independency, like for instance, being a journalist, working in the media, most of the people, the prominent people you'll meet, will want to give you something in exchange of the information you have. They will tell you, I want to buy you lunch, and they'll give you what we call the brown envelope, okay? Once they give you that envelope, because it has money, Are you going to tell the story the same way you gathered it, or you are going to edit and remove what was touching on this person negatively and then disseminate what is in the domain, what people know? You don't give us something new. And then media should always provide a forum for public criticism and compromise. Media acts as a platform for expression. It is through media that even the voiceless within the society, the vulnerable people within the society, the poor people, are heard. And it should make sure that it gives everyone that platform, that forum, so that we can criticize, for instance, our leaders. We can also discuss on the issues that are touching us, affecting us, either positively or negatively. Then media must strive to keep the significant, interesting, and relevant in whatever stories you're giving. If your stories are not catchy, then no one will watch your bulletin, for instance. If your stories are not affecting me in any way, they're not either constructing me to be a better person, or your stories do not have value into my life, then why should I watch you? So always make sure that you keep your stories interesting and relevant, okay? Then it must keep the news comprehensive and proportional. Give us details. In everything that you're doing, you're telling us, make sure that you're able also to understand, synthesize. We are able to digest what you've given us, and then it is well detailed. So the other thing that we need to realize is that the practitioners must be allowed to keep news comprehensive and exercise personal. Yeah. So everything that we are getting, no interference. Let me go to the field, gather my information, come edit my stories, and share with you as it is, as I gathered that. And then we need to realize that citizens too have rights and responsibilities when it comes to news. We know, as we will see, we are human beings, are social beings, and they're active beings. So we also have a role to play in the news that we consume, the content that we consume. Every now and then, you will find a survey that is being done on a certain program. And what they want to know is, are the audience happy? Do they have anything that they would want it to be added to the program? So we have a responsibility and rights when it comes to news. So then, who is a journalist? One thing you need to realize, my dear students, is that this person is a professional. They're the people who present information as news to the audience of newspapers, that is the readership, and magazines, again, readership. Radio is listenership because we listen to radio, and then we watch, okay, the television stations or the internet. There are those people who consume lots of information from the internet. We have examples of journalists, the editors, the news anchors, publishers, columnists, and opinion writers, as we will see as we proceed, and their roles. So a journalist is somebody who gathers and disseminates information on public affairs, usually for a certain duration of time of the publication. Like if it's a newspaper, it's a daily newspaper, could be. It's a weekly newspaper. It's a magazine that is, it comes in after every 3 months, for instance. Or for some broadcast, that is television and radio. So this is the person who goes to the field. But he must be a professional. He will go to the field, gather this information, comes back, treats the information, okay, and then later disseminates the same information to the mass. Remember, in the terms of what we are going to discuss at a given day, at a given time, at a given moment, all that is determined by the journalists. The journalist who will come to the field, get this story, and today he thinks, today we are going to take this perspective. This is what we are going to discuss today. Then tomorrow we'll discuss something else. So all that, it's called the frame building. It is done by the journalists. So at times, people will substitute the term journalist with a reporter, because a reporter is a professional journalist, is a person who is trained. And we see reporters who will go to the field. They, from the ground, the source, if there was an accident, there's always a representative from media, a reporter who is on the ground to give an account of what happens. He's the same person who is going to interview the witnesses and then report the same, what they said. And these journalists will investigate, they edit and report news for newspapers, radio, and television. So the question of who is not a journalist has grown, Donia, with the growth of the new information sources such as blogs and podcasts. We will see that the citizen journalism and how it has come in because of the technology, and it has brought in people who are not trained journalists, and they are also practicing journalism. And that is why we keep saying today the journalism is not about the 5 W's and a H, as we will do. It's not about who did what, where, when, and the effect it has, but it's about the so what of the story. Something different, because by the time you're going to the field, we have these people, they have smartphones. They can be able to shoot that story, and they share through the internet. So the 5 W's and a H have been answered. So our role as good journalists today in the 21st century is giving the so what of the story. So journalists were once defined as employees of newspapers, wire services, broadcast news organization, but an advent of now what I've explained, the citizen journalists or the amateurs who witness, okay, they recount. You remember that young man who was given Nikama drama, Nikama video? He's a citizen journalist because he was able to capture everything that was happening and then he shared to the mass. So it has this citizen journalism, thanks be to the technology, the good smartphone we have, the good internet connectivity, it has blurred the lines between professional journalists and the mere bystanders, people who have never gone to school. And that is why we keep saying in journalism, you really need to be all rounded. You don't just go to a media house and say, you see, I have my papers here. It is, so what else? What is the value addition? What is that one extra thing that you can do that a citizen journalist can be able to do? I can shoot those videos and I can edit them. I can come up with a show. I can write good articles in a newspaper, etc., etc. So what are the qualities of a good journalist? What will make you to be termed as a good person? Like, as an individual, what is that one thing that you feel, because we are doing journalism, that will determine that you are a journalist? One, the curiosity. We keep saying curiosity killed the cat, but in journalism, it is quite applicable. Every time you should have nose for news. You should always want to know more than anybody knows. Let them keep telling you, you like knowing everything. Yes, that is who we are. Journalists are supposed to know everything. And then you can only know these through your curiosity, traits, and then loyalty, respect, okay? Then you should be kind. Remember, we get this information from people, sources, they're our sources. So even as you treat them, how do you treat these people? For instance, someone there's an accident, and these people are emotional. So how do you treat them? Do you go to them and force them to give you information? No, treat people with the same kindness, okay? You'd want them to treat you when you're in their shoe. Then you should be trustworthy. Trust is it's all about journalism. If I give you a story and then you went and tilted it, and then the byline, and especially for the print journalism, you put your byline. The next time I will not even give you a story because I entrusted this story to you so that once you do the story, you put my byline. But what did you do? So in future, I will not share my stories with you. Then you should be passionate, love your job. Let it be that one thing that will make you wake up every morning, okay? Let it be your source of happiness. So every time, like when there's a hitch in your media house, in your media, and there are people are not present, be there to go and do that job and do it with a lot of love. Then, ethics and integrity. So what is ethics? Ethics are simply the moral issues that determine what is right and what is wrong. Within what? within a certain society. Like, for instance, in Kenya, we know we have a code of ethics that is from the Media Council of Kenya. That is what is supposed to be guiding us. So how do we treat these people? Everything, almost everything that we've discussed above, it's contained in the ethics. And integrity is also one of them. Independence is the other one. Then minimizing harm, okay? You don't spread hate. Then confidentiality, protecting your sources. All these is about ethics, and then you should be bold. You can't make it to be a journalist if you fear people. You must be ready to air your grievances. You must be able to ask questions. Because remember, the key people will give you information. They are very senior people within government, could be institution. They are also the big business people within the society. So when you go there and freak out, how then are you going to get this information? So always make sure that you have you're bold, you're courageous. Then you need to possess some skills as a good journalist. One of the key skills that you need to have is the communication skills. Communication is a process of a sender sending information, okay, to the receiver through a medium. So how do you communicate with or to people? There's a difference between when you communicate to people and when you communicate with people. When you communicate to people, it is authoritative. But when you communicate with, it means that we reach to a mutual agreement. Remember, in journalism, it is not about being authoritative, because if you use force, if you undermine people, if you threaten people so that they can give you information, people will refuse to share their information with you. So you need to know how to communicate nicely with respect to people. You need to be eloquent in your language of use. If you're using your mother tongue, then you should have the command in that, your language. If you're using English, Swahili, then have that consistency. You will keep on putting what we call the communication banters. Exactly, yeah. And then technological skills. Remember, we've shifted to a Kenya and the world, which has become global village because of technology, the internet connectivity. So whatever journalists used to use when they started is no longer what they're using today. For instance, initially people used to go and type using the typewriters, but today we have the computers. So do you have the knowledge, the insight on how to operate that computer or not? Then you should also have investigative skills. Remember, journalists are investigators. We have to go to the field and reveal everything that has been done in darkness. We have one, John Alam Namu. He does investigative journalism. And he will go to churches. And he's going to follow these people, practice, at times go to their services, because he wants to get this information. Look at the drug barons. How does he get, that time they did it with Muhammad, how did they come up with these stories? They follow these people, but they do that applying the skills they have, the investigative skills. Because remember, if you just go jump into these people and start asking them with the most controversial questions, they'll not give you this information. So what they will do is to start with the least controversial questions, so that even by the time these people are going to realize that they are being investigated, they'll have something substantial that they can share with the audience. Then, still on skills, we should have the listening skills. Listening skills. A good journalist listens, because the sources will come and recount their happening, the events as they occurred. So if you don't listen, then how else are you going even to get this information? And then we need to be rational or critical thinkers. That is a skill. Every time you get a story, don't just look at the denotative meaning of whatever you've been told. Also go to the connotative within the society, the applicability of this story within the society. Then weigh options. What is the likelihood of the reaction of the people who are consuming this content? And then we also need to have very good reading skills. We read a lot in journalism. You can't just do it without reading. Books will become your friend. You need to review these newspapers. At times you'll be told, today you're the one who is doing the reviews. So if you don't like reading, if you don't have the reading skills, then how are you going to read this newspaper and be able to interpret, breaking it down to the mass so that these people can get the information as you intended them to have? So the next thing is, what are the qualities of a good reporter? Remember, we've said most of the time, often, we refer them as also journalists. They're also journalists because they're professionals who are practicing journalism. So they must have a mastery of spoken or written language. That is the command in language, as we have seen before. And then they must have nose for news. They must be able to sniff. When you sniff, when a dog sniffs and realizes there's a visitor, what does it do? It barks. The same way with a reporter. You should have nose. You should be able to sniff what is newsworthy and what is not newsworthy. And then, once you realize this, the one thing that can sell, because at the end of the day, the size of your organization will not be determined by how big the institution, the media house is, but the size will be determined by the number of sales you're making, the number of listenership, viewership, how many people are watching you. And this is how things now happen in journalism. And you must be current and keep up with the events that are happening. Now, I get shocked when I get to class and I ask my students what is trending, and no one knows. And my question, the next question is usually, and you're trained to become a journalist. If you don't know what is trending today, what will convince me that tomorrow when you get to the field, you'll be knowing what is trending? Like right now, what is trending is COVID-19. We have the Governor Waigoro's case, but still, there are other things that are trending today. So you should always be at par with the things, the events as they unfold. Then, a good reporter must be fair, accurate, and objective in his writing and reporting. When you talk of being fair, when you're a fair person, you give people equal chances. Yes, at times we'll have interviews within our programs, and we have candidate A and B. If you give this candidate 10 minutes, so be fair to give this other person 10 minutes. When questions are asked, don't give some more time and others, you restrict time. No, be fair, then accurate, and always remain objective. Objectives is your goal. What is the one thing that you wanted to tell people? What is the one thing that you wanted people to carry home? So remain objective at all times. And then you must be creative. Creativity. Journalism is an art and science. An art, which means that we must be creative. We must be able to do something that no one else has done, you know. Yes, it was done, but not the way you've done it, so that we can bring a bit of change in whatever we are doing. Like every day we consume news, but the way every media house will disseminate its news will be different. One story can be shared in all media houses, but the angles will be different based on the creativity of the journalists. And then you should always have the ability to dress well. Decency. I'll call it decency in terms of dressing, in terms of the language you use, in terms of profanity, in terms of God, because remember, it's not every journalist who is working within these media houses who is a Christian. So every time you are referring to another religion and their faiths, the profanity part of it should be very important. You should always adhere to that. Know that as a journalist, the moment you stand on the, whether you are a reporter, if you're working for a media house, we wear what we call a veil of ignorance. That veil of ignorance means that we don't have any tribe, we don't have any religion, we don't even have gender. We are simply journalists. So And even the way we carry ourselves, the way we dress. Remember, this is an nonverbal communication which speaks louder than even words. The first impression you create to the people, the sources, for instance, will determine if these people are going to share your stories with. So journalists, when you're going to the field, make sure you're decent. Your attires will communicate more than anything else. Then you must be a good mixer. Remember, we'll go to the field. Then we get this information, and we'll get different angles from different people. So all these sources, you can't just pick one person. You can mix all these stories and then come up with something concrete that you're going to share with people so that everyone no one feels like they've been left out. And then perseverance, this patience, you should always be patient with people. There are people, yes, we know, we have timelines, but you can't go and force people to work at your pace. No, please. Make sure if you need a story from a certain source, you make sure you go and see that person on time so that you avoid that element of hasting that person to give you information. And then you should have good observatory skills. Your eyes will see more than what your ears can hear. Because remember, in every interview, for instance, you're carrying out as a journalist, what will speak louder and what will complement every word that is being said are the nonverbal. So your eyes should be able to see more than your ears can hear. Then you should have self-control and high level of comportment, no matter the situation of circumstances. You are not expected to be carried away. So at this point, I ask this question, my dear students. Do journalists have emotions? Because according to these points, you should be composed. Yes, it is a very sad scene. There's death involved, and you're the one to read the breaking news. And this person, for instance, you had interacted with this person, so there's that relationship, okay? But you're supposed to retain your sanity. You're not supposed to break when you're reading news. You inform people, and then later could be you can go and cry. Then, even when you're interviewing people, they'll also answer respond in a way that you didn't expect. So what are you supposed to do? Keep your cool. Make sure that you don't overreact. In journalism, we don't have room for those personalities, you know. You forget about your personality. Then once you're done with your interview, you can pick your personality and go home. But if you go there and start getting agitated, so how do you expect to get this information? So self-composure is very important. Patience is another one. Then you should possess enough idealism to inspire in diction prose, but not too much abstract, detached to professionalism. So enough idealism. Then you need to have a lot of ideas. So many, I'm looking for a good word. Okay, you have not just one idea. In case that person doesn't like that idea, you can be able to rephrase this question and get the information you require from this person. Then you should be multi-skilled. You should not only, like what I've said, you should be all-rounded. When you're getting outside there and you go to a media house for an interview, the one thing they'll ask you, what can you do for this? What is the value addition? Why should we hire you anyway? And I get so sad when I hear my student call me and tell me, you know, I went to this interview and I told them I'm a very good presenter, because all of us want to become presenters, because we want to be seen. But the question is, you know, even this citizen journalist is a very good presenter. Did you know they can also go out there, they shoot and they edit? So what is the one extra thing that you can do apart from being a presenter? You can go to the field, you can be a reporter, you can be an editor, you can do online content. That is where we are today. So it is not all about I being a presenter because I have good looks, you being a presenter because you have a good voice. It is not about your voice. It's not about your looks. It's about the brains. What else can you bring into this platform that no one else has brought? And then one thing you need to realize, and always when you go to the when you start practicing journalism, is that the public will always expect and they deserve prompt, accurate, and objective information. So professional journalists should always dedicate their lives to news. That is your career. News, going to the field, your camera, your recorder, that is your tool. You can't do without that. And know that you have an obligation. It is your duty to inform these people. It is your duty to keep this well-informed, entertained, and educated citizenry. How then do you do that if the only thing you will do is to wait for the citizen journalists to go to the field, source news for you, they put the news on their social media platforms, and then you pick something? That will be stale news because we'll have read all that. So you know that it is not about sitting down and waiting for news. It is about getting out of the office, getting off your computer, pick your mic, your recorder, and your camera, go to the field, because this is where we get currency or currencies, okay? Things that are unfolding. And that is the end of our class. But one thing I want you to carry with you is the core principles of a good journalism. And that is one, working independently, integrity, independence, and above all, minimizing harm. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you next time. Goodbye, God bless you, and keep safe.
These televised lectures supplement our robust online learning going on our MKU online platform. You can view more on our televised lectures via our online platform. We are in a digital era, and Mount Kenya University knows this. The following are the steps to follow so as to complete your online application. Download the application form from the website www.mku.ac.ke. Attach copies of your academic certificates and ID. Pay the application fees via M-Pesa pay bill number 270988. Your ID is the account number. 2,000 shillings is the charge for a postgraduate. You can also deposit in the bank accounts provided on the website. Then email all the above to apply@mku.ac.ke.